On to Lexington, who we have at 2. The fans have them at 4, and we even got a comment on the Reddit of, I see you are falling for Lexington yet again. That's a great idea until you see the fact that they have Goodrum, Blessing, Mendes, they got Ferry, they got Luis Felipe, Firmino, Malloy, Adonez, Burks, and then Simla in the back. And plus, by the way, they ended the year amazingly and actually sort of figure stuff out. So, John, with multiple record-breaking transfers that they made, especially with the headline of Malloy and Goodrum, is a top 2 finish good enough for what they've spent?
Given that this team has never made the playoffs before as an organization, given the way that they see this internally as a little bit more of a long-term process than maybe we're thinking of from the outside, if they finish top 2 in the West, that should be good enough. Now, if it's top 2 in the West and then they lay an egg in the playoffs, maybe we can start to ask questions. But if they're at that level in a conference that is pretty stacked from number 1 to number 12, that is a win. And you're right to talk about why we have these expectations. They became the first team to spend $100,000 on a USL player, intra-league transfer-wise, and then they did it again a second time in the same offseason. They brought back Adita Kuhn, who they paid a fee for last year. They recruited a former defender of the year. Like, there should be expectations. Last year, they got their feet wet, but it wasn't this level of Galacticos going on. So, yeah, that has to be the expectation.
And they'll have basically a really good test to see, is this Lexington team for real to open the season with the Blue Grassico? Like, Philip Goodrum can go up against his former club. And, like, honestly, if we could do USL individual player bets, Philip Goodrum could very well be scoring against his former club in that game. And then they back it up with a game against Sacramento the very following week, both of these games at home for Lexington, that we'll very quickly see kind of early in the season, is this Lexington team for real?
You mentioned Galacticos style, where, I think it's easy to look at Lexington and say all-star team, super team, whatever. I'm also looking at what they did on the Super League side. And for people who haven't been following along, the Super League, they did the same thing. They bought your best players and they ran it. And they had a coach named Masaki Hemi as their coach. Well, would you look at that? Masaki Hemi is also the Lexington men's coach now. And so going in and having these really great teams and making a system out of it, is there a little bit of, I don't want to call it ego management, but a little bit of ego management that Hemi might already be accustomed to on the women's side that you can kind of take to the men's side?
100%. I mean, when you're coming in with this level of player and you have to get them to buy into the system, even if there isn't an ego problem, because a lot of like Aaron Malloy is the nicest dude in the world, but just getting the buy-in from top to bottom is difficult in this short run-up. So if you want to take this level of talent, integrate it into a team that is going to be pretty sophisticated with the way they want to play soccer, you have to have a coach that has shown ability to do that. And you're exactly right to say that's what Hemi did in the Super League.
Ryan, when you're looking at this squad and the run-up they're going to have into it, how much can we put into travel? Because they are, the most Eastern team. They are more Eastern than some Eastern Conference teams, because that all makes a ton of sense. Can we put a lot into travel and maybe why results may not be what you would think from a team that looks this good on paper?
Yeah, I absolutely think travel has certainly played a role, and especially considering the fact that we'll have instances this season with Lexington when they'll go like 4 of their 5 games played. I think it's within the month of May and June, will be on the road, and that's just going to be a grind for a lot of these players. And excuse me, especially when you get towards the at least stretch part of the end of the season, when a lot of these games will be played on the road when it comes time to start clinching playoff spots, that it eventually is going to wear down on a team and what is going to be arguably the most grueling schedule within the Western Conference, within all of USL Championship.
John, when you're looking at how they ended last season, where they started figuring it out, and then a late sputter took them out of the playoffs. Can you take any kind of continuity they may have had with that team going into this team, or without Boss being the boss anymore? Do you really have to feel like it is a brand new start?
I mean, I think if you watch what Lexington did at the end of last season, which was some level of possession out of the back, like a kind of mixed approach in possession, but a decent amount of pressure, a willingness to possess in a back three and then let one of the fullbacks go upfield. That's kind of what Hemi did with the Super League team. So you're not moving miles away tactically. And in that sense, there is something to build off of. You think about returning players like a Hafferty, like a Blaine Ferry. I think Nick Firmino is going to get minutes, Blessing and Adidakun. They know how this system is supposed to be run. That's going to help this team writ large get up to speed more quickly than it would in isolation. And yeah, that momentum, even if it didn't end up in a playoff spot, maybe is going to give them a little bit of a kickstart in 26.
So, kind of looking through this one last time, one thing we knew that Brooks Thompson was gone on loan for a couple of days now because Third Degree kind of posted about it a while back on Twitter, but we knew Brooks Thompson was gone on loan, and so we weren't able to, I wasn't able to update the graphic before it got posted today. But do you guys see any kind of fear without any real backup options behind Simla, with Thompson gone on a short-term loan with an option to buy and Ketterer, who is down with injury? Is that a real concern for Lexington?
I mean, they're going to get somebody. Semla proved to be pretty durable. He's got the size and frame you want out of your number one. Goalkeeper injuries are somewhat rare relative to field players, so it's not going to be like a nightmare if that backup goalie is a bit of a plan B option for them. But it is, if you're going to poke a hole in this team, it probably is the one spot where you're like, oh, okay, maybe Lexington does have a slight problem.
I'm also, and I'm trying to pull it up because I was very prepared, but then I accidentally exited out. Lexington does have a 2 team, and from what I remember, their goalkeeper then was solid. So there's a world where they can pull someone from the 2 team to kind of be a backup option on the bench. Maybe they can't get in right away just because of, well, maybe they're in college, and I'm trying to pull it up before I completely talk out my tail here, but they also have an academy set up where if you have an inexperienced too that at the worst comes on at the very last, during an injury, during a game, that's possible. You could also just say, okay, no big deal. Or if that happens during the week, you can bring in an emergency goalkeeping loan if needed.
Yeah, like their League Two goalkeeper, at least last season, was someone who played 3 years at the University of Kentucky, was the Sun Belt goalie of the year in 2022. If that's your worst case scenario, like a guy who was a very good starter at the college level, I don't think that's a nightmare.
I'm assuming you're talking about Griffin Huff.
I'm talking about Casper Moles, but the fact that they had 2 legit goalkeepers probably tells you something.
Yeah, Griffin Huff was he. You know what? No, Griffin Huff would not be available because I remember seeing what happened with him. He's actually signed with Chattanooga FC. So you are probably right to be calling out the other one. So because Griffin Huff just got signed professionally. So, okay.